Nothing about us, without us, expresses a powerful commitment to inclusion. In the context of dementia, it affirms that people living with dementia must play an active and meaningful role in shaping decisions that affect their lives. These decisions include not only clinical care, but also the design of the environments in which they live, visit, and participate in community life. The phrase emphasizes dignity, autonomy, and voice. It reminds us that genuine progress in dementia design begins by listening to the insights, preferences, and lived experiences of the people most affected. This principle underpins the work of Dementia Alliance International and provides the ethical foundation for this presentation. The Environmental Design Special Interest Group, or ED-SIG, emerged from the momentum generated by the World Alzheimer Report 2020, which examined dementia-related design in depth and on a global scale. The report highlighted the need for stronger leadership, clearer frameworks, and more widely shared expertise in dementia-friendly design. ED-SIG was formed to help meet this need. It brings together designers, researchers, people with lived experience, educators and advocates committed to improving built environments for people living with dementia. The group is guided by the values and principles articulated in the Dignity Manifesto of Design for People Living with Dementia, ensuring a foundation rooted in dignity, justice, and human rights. This presentation is part of ED-SIG's initiative to share knowledge broadly, supporting people living with dementia, their carers and professionals around the world to deepen their understanding of dementia design. The World Alzheimer Report 2020 set out to provide the most comprehensive international overview of dementia-related design to date. It explored how environments, homes, care facilities, hospitals, public spaces and communities can support well-being and independence for people living with dementia. The report examined differences between low, middle and high-income countries and between rural and urban regions. It considered cultural expectations around aging, the realities of economic constraints, and the potential of innovation and entrepreneurship to improve design. The report also looked at dementia design through the lens of human rights and disability inclusion, helping position dementia design within global conversations about equity and accessibility. It aimed to provide an evidence base strong enough to support the development of national dementia strategies around the world. The rich international collaboration and dialogue from producing the ADI report highlighted the need to articulate the values underpinning dementia design. Motivated by this experience, the authors developed and published the Dignity Manifesto of Design for People Living with Dementia in 2021, 1 year after the ADI report. The interdisciplinary team behind the Dignity Manifesto included Richard Fleming, researcher, educator and enabling design advocate; John Zeisel, researcher, advocate and enabling design advocate; Kirsty Bennett, architect specializing in dementia and aging design; Kate Swaffer, person living with dementia and advocate; Linda Henderson, family carer and advocate; Jan Golombowski, architect specializing in salutogenic design. This group combined professional expertise, lived experience, and caregiving insights, ensuring the manifesto was evidence-informed, inclusive, and person-centered. The manifesto articulates 8 operational values and 10 principles that together form a coherent ethical and practical foundation for dementia-friendly design. The values express the fundamental values that guide good design, while the principles describe what environments must achieve in order to uphold those commitments. This framework is central to ED-SIG's work and supports design, evaluation, training and policy across many countries. This raises the question, what is a value? A value is not simply a guideline or policy. It is a fundamental belief about the importance and worth of something. Values guide decisions, shape priorities, and define what we consider ethical, right, or desirable. They act as invisible but powerful drivers behind every design choice. Clearly stated, values help explain not just what we do, but importantly, why we do it. The manifesto expresses values in two ways. The first is the foundational human rights values stated in the introduction. These are respecting the dignity, autonomy, independence of people living with dementia in the context of equality of opportunity and non-discrimination. The second is the list of applied design values. We will go through these individually. The first value in the Dignity Manifesto asks us to consider the holistic well-being of the individual, the community, and the environment. This invites a broad and integrated view of what it means to live well, one that recognizes that individuals don't thrive in isolation. Our sense of well-being is shaped by the people around us, by the communities we are part of, and by the physical and natural environments we inhabit. It also suggests that these three elements, individual, community, and environment, are not separate. They influence one another, and their well-being is interconnected. If one is neglected, the others are affected. A well-designed care setting therefore supports not just the needs of the person, but also the quality of relationships around them and the health and meaning of the spaces they move through each day. Authentically co-design with people living with dementia. The second value in the Dignity Manifesto encourages us to value projects and designs that are authentically co-designed with people living with dementia. This idea of co-design is gaining ground internationally, not just in dementia care, but in many areas of policy, service development, and research. At its heart is the belief that people who are affected by decisions should be involved in shaping them. In the context of dementia design, this means listening to people living with dementia, not just observing them or designing for them, but designing with them. It involves creating opportunities for people to express what matters to them, to test ideas, and to reflect on how spaces and services affect their everyday lives. Enable people to remain in their communities. The third value in the Dignity Manifesto encourages us to value projects and designs that enable people living with dementia to choose to remain in their communities and with their families. It suggests a preference for continuity over relocation, for connection over separation. In many ways, it speaks to the idea of belonging, not just to a place, but to a network of relationships and to a familiar rhythm of life. At its heart, this value recognizes that people with dementia, like all of us, may wish to stay close to what they know, to familiar streets, neighbours, traditions and routines. It also suggests that design should not automatically assume institutionalization as the final stage of care. Instead, it asks whether we can shape environments, homes, neighbourhoods, housing developments and care settings that allow people to remain embedded in their communities for as long as they wish and are able. Maximise intergenerational interactions. This value highlights the mutual benefits that arise when people living with dementia share everyday life with younger generations. Intergenerational contact strengthens identity, purpose and connection for older adults, while helping younger people develop empathy, understanding, and a sense of continuity. Good design makes these encounters part of ordinary life, by creating welcoming, shared spaces and avoiding the age-segregated environments that can lead to isolation. It reminds us that people living with dementia remain active members of families and communities, with contributions that matter across generations. Focus on the strengths and abilities of people living with dementia while compensating for functional changes. This next value invites us to shift our perspective. Rather than seeing people living with dementia primarily in terms of their losses or limitations, it asks us to recognize and support their strengths and abilities, while also providing appropriate compensation for the changes they are experiencing. It's a subtle balance. The goal is not to deny the challenges that dementia brings, but to avoid defining a person solely by those challenges. It means asking what the person can still do, enjoy, or contribute, and how the environment can support them in continuing to do so for as long as possible. Accentuate the freedom of people living with dementia to make choices. This value invites us to consider how design can support the freedom of people living with dementia to make choices, to have agency in their daily lives, even as their abilities change. At its heart, this value speaks to autonomy, dignity, and respect. It asks us to avoid making all the decisions for a person, even when they need support. Instead, it encourages us to create opportunities for meaningful choices. Choices about where to go, what to do, what to eat, and who to spend time with. Assist people living with dementia to maintain their culture. This value encourages us to recognize the importance of culture in the lives of people living with dementia, and to design environments that help them maintain a sense of cultural identity, familiarity, and belonging. It suggests that culture is not just background or decoration. It is central to how people understand themselves, how they connect with others, and how they find meaning, especially in times of vulnerability. For people living with dementia, culture can act as a thread of continuity. When memory fades or language becomes uncertain, cultural rituals, music, food, and surroundings can still evoke a sense of home. They can provide comfort, orientation, and dignity. And when we honour culture through design, we also affirm the person's history, values, and uniqueness. Be informed by evidence and research. This final value asks us to ensure that projects and designs for people living with dementia are informed by evidence and research. It may sound like a technical or professional concern, but it carries a much deeper ethical implication. That the environments we create should be based on knowledge, on careful observation, tested principles, and thoughtful reflection, not on habit, guesswork, or assumption. Design, especially in dementia care, should not be a matter of opinion or fashion. It should reflect what we know about how people experience space, how they respond to light, sound, layout, and materials, and how these elements can support or undermine well-being. In that sense, this value calls for rigour and responsibility, but it also raises questions about what kinds of knowledge we value and how that knowledge is generated, shared, and applied. Having described the values in some detail, the next step is to describe the principles in more detail. I would like to introduce them by using the illustrations in a book that Professor Xu-Feng Tsai wrote with my help. Professor Tsai is the Director General of the Department of Nursing and Healthcare in the Taiwanese Ministry of Health and Welfare. Principle 1. Begin each project by developing a vision for a dignified way of life for people living with dementia. This principle reminds us that the physical environment is not simply a backdrop to care. It is the concrete expression of the values, priorities, and intentions of the people and organizations that shape it. Every design project should begin with a clear and explicit vision of what a dignified life for people living with dementia looks like in practice. When the building embodies the vision, it constantly reminds the staff of the values and practices that are required while providing them with the tools they need to do their job. This principle also acknowledges that there is no single right way to live with dementia. The vision should be co-developed with those who live and work in the environment, ensuring it reflects diverse cultural values, lifestyles, and expectations. When this process is done well, the environment becomes not just a place of safety or care, but a place where life continues with dignity and purpose. Principle 2. Where safety measures are agreed to be appropriate, design them to be as unobtrusive as possible. People living with dementia require an internal and external environment that is safe and easy to move around if they are to continue to pursue their way of life and make the most of their abilities. Potential risks, such as steps, must be removed. All safety features must be unobtrusive, as obvious safety features, such as fences or locked doors, can lead to frustration, agitation, and anger, or apathy and depression. Principle 3. Design the environment to reflect a human scale. the scale of a building can affect the behaviour and feelings of a person living with dementia. The experience of scale is influenced by three key factors: the number of people that the person encounters, the overall size of the building, and the size of the individual components, such as doors, rooms, and corridors. A person should not be intimidated by the size of the surroundings or confronted with a multitude of interactions and choices. Rather, the scale should encourage a sense of well-being and enhance the competence of a person. Principle 4. Plan the environment to make it easy for people to see and move where they want to go. The provision of an easily understood environment will help to minimize confusion. It is particularly important for people living with dementia to be able to recognize where they are, where they have come from, and where they can go. When a person can see key places, such as a lounge room, dining room, their bedroom, kitchen, and an outdoor area, they are more able to make choices and see where they want to go. Buildings that provide these opportunities are said to have good visual access. Good visual access opens up opportunities for engagement and gives the person living with dementia the confidence to explore their environment. It also enables staff to see residents. This reduces staff anxiety about the residents' welfare and reassures the residents. Principle 5. Optimize stimulation. Because dementia reduces the ability to filter stimulation and attend to only those things that are important, a person living with dementia becomes stressed by prolonged exposure to large amounts of stimulation. The environment should be designed to minimize exposure to stimuli that are not helpful to the resident, such as unnecessary noises and the sight of signs, posters, and clutter that are of no use to the resident. Doors that lead to areas that may cause difficulties are often of particular concern, and their visibility should be minimized. Once the unhelpful stimulation has been removed, the next stage is to enhance the helpful stimulation. This can be done by enabling the person living with dementia to see, hear, and smell things that give them cues about where they are and what they can do. Consideration needs to be given to providing redundant cueing, that is, providing a number of cues to the same thing, recognizing that what is meaningful to one person will not necessarily be meaningful to another. Using text and image in signs is an example of this. Cues need to be carefully designed so that they do not add to clutter and become overstimulating. Principle 6. Promote movement, engagement, and meaningfulness. Movement and purposeful activity are vital to the well-being of people living with dementia. This principle recognizes that physical inactivity and passivity are not inevitable consequences of cognitive decline. They are often the result of environments that fail to encourage and support engagement. People living with dementia benefit from spaces that invite them to move about safely and take part in everyday life. Movement is encouraged by providing a well-defined pathway that is free of obstacles and complex decision points and guides people past points of interest and opportunities to engage in activities or social interaction. The pathway should be both internal and external, providing an opportunity and reason to go outside when the weather permits. Engagement does not always require structured programming. Opportunities to participate in ordinary tasks, such as setting a table, watering plants, or folding laundry, can offer moments of identity, familiarity, and connection. The environment should make these activities visible, accessible, and meaningful. Principle 7. Afford people opportunities to enjoy contact with nature. Contact with nature offers powerful psychological and physiological benefits for people living with dementia. Natural environments can calm, uplift, and reorient. They provide sensory experiences that are rich but not overwhelming, such as sunlight, fresh air, rustling leaves, birdsong, and the scent of flowers or soil. This principle reflects growing evidence that nature is not a luxury or an add-on. It is an essential part of a therapeutic environment. Regular access to gardens, views of greenery, and natural materials supports emotional well-being, reduces stress, and can even lessen agitation and the need for medication. The opportunity to experience changes in weather, light, and season also supports a sense of time and place. Principle 8. Design all components of the environment to be as familiar as possible. The loss of short-term memory results in people living with dementia essentially living in the past. They find it difficult to remember how to use new things, or even what the new things are. Familiar things from their past bring comfort, recognition, and reassurance. This principle recognizes that environments designed with familiar forms, materials, and personal touches help people feel competent and at home. This principle is especially important when individuals move into care settings that are unfamiliar and potentially overwhelming. The presence of familiar materials, layouts, furniture, and personal objects can ease the transition and help the new environment feel like home. Principle 9. Afford people opportunities to choose to be alone or with various size groups of people. Social needs vary from person to person, and even within a single day, those needs may shift. This principle recognizes that dignity includes the freedom to choose when and how to engage with others. This requires a variety of spaces, some for quiet conversation and some for larger groups, as well as spaces where people can be by themselves. When the internal and external spaces have a variety of characters, for example, a place for reading, looking out of the window, or talking, this cues the person to engage in relevant activity and stimulates different emotional responses. Crucially, this principle is not about directing people to be social. It's about enabling choice, providing accessible and appealing options that support different levels of interaction depending on mood, preference, or capacity. Principle 10. Provide easy access and connection to and from local communities, families, and friends. Social connection is not a luxury. It is a vital part of emotional, psychological, and even physical well-being. Without constant reminders of who they are, a person living with dementia loses their sense of identity. Frequent interaction with friends and relatives can help to maintain that identity. The more the environment enables visitors to drop in easily and enjoy being in places that encourage interaction, the more this sense of identity is reinforced. Such places need to be attractive and comfortable to encourage visitors to come and spend time. Being able to access the community, host a family meal, or receive visitors in a relaxed setting reinforces the idea that life continues after a diagnosis of dementia, that relationships endure, and participation still matters. As we come to the end of this introduction to the Dignity Manifesto, let's review the purpose of the manifesto. It was written to share a foundation for designing environments that genuinely support people living with dementia. By stating the core values and principles that reflect an emerging international consensus on good dementia design, the manifesto provides a common language for designers, care providers, researchers, families, and communities. At its heart, the manifesto is about making sure that the environments we create truly benefit people living with dementia, places that support dignity, confidence, independence, and everyday enjoyment. By naming both the ethical commitments and the practical directions, the manifesto helps turn good intentions into real-world design decisions that make life better for the people who need it most. The Dignity Manifesto is now hosted by the Wicking Dementia Research and Education Centre at the University of Tasmania. It continues to guide education, design, evaluation and policy, including through its integration of the Dignity Environmental Assessment Tool. It has been signed by more than 500 people committed to supporting good design for people living with dementia. The signatories include people living with dementia, their advocates and carers, as well as a great many eminent researchers, practitioners and policymakers. Its influence is expanding as more organisations adopt the values and principles it describes, supporting a global movement toward environments that uphold dignity, autonomy, cultural meaning, and human rights for people living with dementia. Please consider signing it if you haven't already done so. The central message is simple. Environments matter. They shape identity, affect independence, and can either ease or intensify the cognitive challenges of dementia. When we ground design in clear values and use evidence-based principles, we create places that reduce the problems associated with dementia while upholding dignity and enriching daily life. The work of dementia-supportive design is ongoing and collaborative, and each project offers a new opportunity to listen and learn while creating environments where people living with dementia can thrive. Thank you for your commitment to this important and evolving field. Thank you also for your interest in Dementia Alliance International and its Environmental Design Special Interest Group.